Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Amanda. It is the end of January already. Now, we're going to go over all the books that I read in January. I'm just going to quickly talk about them a little bit. If I really enjoyed them or if I have a lot to say, I'll talk more about that book. Otherwise, we're just going to move through these rather quickly. I do want to start sharing stats as far as just basic things about them. I have started a new spreadsheet. I didn't start it. I have gotten a new spreadsheet that I'm using for this year. And so I am in the process of filling everything out for January. And it's still January 30th. So there's one day left. And I think I'm going to finish my last book, which we'll talk about in a second, and start February with no books going, which is very rare for me, but I think that's what we're going to do. And actually, since I do the weekly wrap-ups and I talk about the books that I've read, you've already heard about almost all of these books. And so this kind of feels redundant to me, and maybe I'm not going to do it in the same way going forward, but I just wanted to do it this month again and just see what I thought about the books and where I want to go from here with this. So I have them divided up by genre, and so first, let's go with the one that I only read one book from, and that is romance, and that was Heartstopper Volume 1. I actually have a physical copy of this, which out of all the books that I read, I only have a physical copy of 4. I had the 5th one, and I mailed it to my friend so she could read it. So I only have 4. This is my only romance. It is a graphic novel. If you have somehow not heard of this yet, it is about a boy. On the back it says, boy meets boy, boys become friends, boys fall in love. So that's it. That's the basic premise of Heartstopper. They're in high school. It's great. The next category, genre, that I read the least in is horror. And here's what I have decided to do, though, going forward, is if I'm having an issue with mystery being one category and thriller and horror being another category, because for me, thrillers are closer to mystery than they are closer to horror. That is just my personal opinion. We can talk about this much more, I guess, in a breakdown, but thrillers almost seem like a sub-genre of mystery or horror. Like, you can put it in either category, but they seem like a sub-genre. Like, if we're talking about mystery, we have a spectrum, and I feel like on this side of the spectrum is cozy mysteries and low stakes and low angst and not much terror or any of that. And then on this side is thrillers, but they all fall under the mystery heading. Anyway, that is my own personal opinion. So I'm having a bit of an issue because the thing that I use, my tracker that I'm using, has horror and thriller together and then mystery by itself. So I am not doing that. I'm doing mystery thriller together and then horror by itself. So all of that to say, the first horror that I read in this month was Earthdivers Volume 4. I love that the first 2 things I've talked about are both graphic novels, but that's fine. This is Stephen Graham Jones, and it is the 4th volume, like I said, but the overall thing is called Kill Columbus, and it is a story of time travel where some indigenous people, I'm trying not to give anything away, have found a way to go back in time, and someone has volunteered to go kill Columbus on his journey to the new world, quote unquote. So that's what that one's about. That's volume 4. The last horror that I read is Gwendy's Button Box by Stephen King and Richard Chizmar. So I've never read anything by Richard Chizmar, and maybe it's because this was so short. It's less than 200 pages, but I couldn't distinguish the 2 writings in here. I feel like when I've read dual Stephen King and somebody else, I could tell when I thought it was Stephen King's stuff or ideas and when it was the other writers, but I couldn't tell in here. So I guess that's a good thing. Anyway, this is about Gwendy, who runs up these stairs right here on the cover one day, and this man is at the top of the stairs, and he gives her a button box, and he tells her to protect it, and that's it. And she keeps it, and stuff happens, and I can't tell you what else happens, but there's 2 more books in this trilogy, and I own them both. They're on one of these shelves behind me, but anyway, I have them, and so I will definitely be going forward. I'm not doing it right now, but anyway, this was my second horror. The next genre with the least number, I read 3 sci-fi books. And so I've got, the first one was Hammer and Crucible by Cameron Cooper. All 3 of them are from the self-published sci-fi competition. We are about to start the semifinals in that round of reading and voting, and every semifinalist will get their own video talking about their book. So there will be 6 of them, and that'll be coming up in the next few months as we go along. So look for that if you're interested in some self-published sci-fi books. Otherwise, these are the ones I read. Hammer and Crucible by Cameron Cooper. Our team did vote to move this one forward. So this was, I think, second place. It was my second favorite. So I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. And I'm glad that it's going forward and somebody else is going to get to read it. It's a mystery solving, I guess, but not really that at the heart of it. It ends up being more than that. But at the beginning, they're just trying to solve a disappearance / murder. And we find out what happens as we go through the book. Anyway, it had some nice twists in it that I thought were really good. And it was about a woman and her grandmother solving this case. But she's not the kind of grandmother you think she is. The next one I finished was Bloodlines by Peter Hartog. Now, this one was almost like I don't know. This one was almost just like a mystery. We have a police officer who is in the future. I mean, I guess the futuristic aspect of it is the only thing that made it sci-fi, but to me, it was just more of like a police drama kind of thing where he was solving some murders where people did not have any blood left in their bodies. So he was trying to prove or disprove the existence of vampires. So I'm not going to tell you what happened, of course. These books are all available on Amazon, so you should go check them out. Finally, the last book I finished in the sci-fi was Aestus. I'm still not sure how to say it. I've heard it a couple of different ways, but I think that's close. This is book 1, The City, by S.Z. Atwell, and this one was so good. I cannot wait. This was my number 1 pick. This was our number 1 pick in our whole group. By and away, it had the highest votes, and so it definitely moves forward. I can't wait to see what the other groups think about it as they start reading it. But we have people who live underground, and we're starting the story out from the point of view of a girl, and she lives underground, and there are things that live above ground, and bad things happen when you're above ground and the sun goes down. That's all I'm saying. That's it. We're exploring the city in book 1. And there's only 2 books. It's a duology. They're both really long, though, but it's worth it. And it goes really fast. Okay. Almost tied, we have the mystery, thriller, and fantasy. And fantasy has the least amount. Technically, it's going to be tied when I finish the month. So we'll talk about that. The book that I'm currently reading, but I am this far from being done with this book. And that is Song of Susanna by Stephen King. I am definitely going to finish it tonight. I just have that much left. I'll be done. If not, I still have a whole day tomorrow because it's only the 30th. But this book makes the fantasy / mystery thriller even at 7 books each. I'll talk about this just in my weekly wrap up. This is book 6 of The Dark Tower, so I can't say anything about it anyway, except clearly it's about Susanna, and it's fantastic. So that's all I'm going to say about Song of Susanna. And the first thing I read for fantasy in the month was Amari and the Great Game. This is the sequel to Amari and the Night Brothers. Just as good as the first book. I even liked it better because, first books have to do a lot of explaining for background stuff or to introduce us to the world that we live in. This is clearly a magical world. So I loved that in book 2, we were able to just jump right back into where we left off. We're still following Amari, and we learn what the Great Game is. That's all I'm going to say about it. You should read both of them. Even if you don't normally read middle grade fantasy, I think that you would like this series. The second book that I finished was my first Brian McClellan. I know a lot of people have read his Powder Mage series. I didn't even know about that until I picked this book up, and then I went and did some research because this book is so good. It's called In the Shadow of Lightning, and their magic is glass-based magic. It is so cool the way it works, and I loved it so much. And I was like, oh, I'm ready to go read the next one. And I forgot that I had gotten this book from NetGalley as an ARC. So there is no next book. So now I'm hooked and I can't read the next book yet. But anyway, it is well worth going and picking up. And I'm definitely going to start reading the Powder Mage series just because I loved his writing so much. So I will definitely be picking that up. The next one that I finished was Tress of the Emerald Sea. Hopefully I will have a copy of that to hold up soon. It should be on its way to me, and I can't wait. This is the first, I've never bought like a special edition of any book or anything like that. These secret projects are the first things that I have purchased, and I only got the physical copy and the ebook copy. So I cannot wait for the physical copy to get here. It'll be my first like collector's item that I have for books. So I can't wait. The next book that I finished is the beginning of our year-long journey through Robin Hobb's opus. I don't know if she's even done writing it, but I know it's a series of trilogies that all take place in the same world. I don't know that they all have the same characters. I feel like the characters reappear throughout it, but I don't think they're the main focus. Anyway, that could all be wrong. That's just what I have inferred from other people. Anyway, that is Assassin's Apprentice. And this follows Fitz as he is born. Well, I guess we meet him when he's like 6 years old. And so we're just following him as he's growing up. Probably through the first 10 years of his life. Or not the first 10 years, but till he's about 16 or 17 maybe. We don't get ages in here, but that's what I would say. That this book probably follows him for about 10 years of his life. And then we're moving on to book 2. But this is a year-long thing into the world of Robin Hobb. And I'm liking it so far. I'm hooked and ready to go. The next fantasy book that I read was A Whole New World. And I read this because we took a trip to Disney World and I just wanted to do something whimsical for Disney, like something new or outside of my normal. And so somebody suggested these. They're called Twisted Tale. It's a whole series. And this was book number 1. And I like Aladdin. And so I was like, okay, I'm in. I'll do it. So I read that while we were at Disney. It was really good. It was cute. I'm not continuing on because it's just not, I'm definitely not the target audience for this whole series, but it was nice. And finally, the last fantasy book that I read was The Extremely Inconvenient Adventures of Bronte Meadowstone. That is a very long title. It's a middle grade book. A little girl is 12 years old when she's telling the story of what happened when she was 10. Her parents passed away. She got their will, and their will had very specific instructions that she had to follow, and that's what this is. It was told in a very matter-of-fact way, and I actually think that if you like The House in the Cerulean Sea, I think you would like this book. Like, it's told in kind of that same, like, no-nonsense manner. Horrible things can be said, and you're like, it's fine. Like, just, it's fine. So I think that, I don't mean horrible things. I just mean bad things can happen, and our main character is just moving right along. Like, she acknowledges things and says, I'm fine, let's go, and just keeps moving. So I don't know why, but for some reason, it was the feeling that I got from it was the same as The House in the Cerulean Sea. So that is my recommendation. I don't know that I've ever done one of those before, like if you like this, then you'll like this, but that's what I think about this. Anyway, let's move on to the last category, which is mystery thriller. I'm not going to go in the order that I read these because I'm saving my favorite book to the very end. So I have them a little bit grouped. So let's do that. I read 2 books in the J.D. Robb series. So I read Festive in Death. First I read Concealed in Death and then Festive in Death. And they just were about mysteries that Eve solved. But this was book number 38 and book number 39. So I am getting there. I am getting closer and closer all the time to being caught up. And her new book comes out in February. So I'm not going to be caught up in order to read that. But that means I think her next book this year comes out in September. And so I will definitely be caught up and be able to pick that book up in September and finally be like with everybody else when the new book comes out. For Jim Butcher, I read a couple of short stories, which I'm not going to talk about unless I read the whole short story collection. But I read the graphic novel, Welcome to the Jungle. And this was cool. It was about Harry Dresden, and he was solving a mystery at the Chicago Zoo, and which was really interesting. There were people, or there was a person who was attacked or who died, and they were trying to say that the gorilla did it, and Harry was like, I don't think so. So anyway, they were trying to solve, did the gorilla do it, did the gorilla not do it, and of course there's magic stuff. Finally, the last just straight mystery that I read was Stormfront, which is book number 1 in the Harry Dresden series. And the reason I read the graphic novel first is because it takes place directly before Stormfront starts, which was nice because I feel like I got to meet Harry in the Welcome to the Jungle graphic novel, and then we jump right into Stormfront. It's him solving a crime, which I feel like is what's going to happen through each of these Dresden novels. It's going to be like Harry Dresden solving a crime. So we'll see if I'm right or not, but that's what it feels like. He's a private investigator, magical private investigator, and he has been hired to solve something. And then partway through, it's like, never mind. I was just kidding. And he's like, wait a minute, something is going on here. So he keeps investigating, and that's what we find out. So finally, that leads me to the thrillers section of the mystery this time. I have one in person, and that is Final Cut by S.J. Watson. This one is about a movie maker who is told to go work on a disappearance that's happened in this town, and she doesn't really want to go because it's the town she's from, and she has changed her name and done a lot of other things, and doesn't want to go back there, but she has to. So that's what happens in this book. And I read the last one actually in this category that I finished was Blood's Echo by Isabella Maldonado. This is the beginning of a new series about Veronica Cruz. Okay, her first name might not be Veronica. I'm arguing with myself, but her last name is definitely Cruz. And we're kicking off this series with her. I love Maldonado's writing. I will read all of them. They're all like police, FBI, that kind of thing. Her other series, which I love, is, I'm all caught up on it, which is why I moved over to the Cruz series. And so there's also another series that I just saw it's coming out. So I've got that one over on my to be read list. Like, I will read whatever she writes. I love it so much. She was a former, or is a former FBI agent. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in her bio about training at Quantico and the rest of the stuff that she did. And I just think it's great. And so she definitely has like the insider scoop on all of this. And I really enjoyed it. My favorite book of the month. I guess it's going to be my favorite unless Song of Susanna pushes it out of the way. I'm going with The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell. And this was also the first book that I read. So 30 days later, with all these books in between, here is what I still remember and still like about it. The different points of view all came together at just the right time. We had somebody in the past on the night she disappeared. We had somebody else in the present. And then we had her on the actual night that she disappeared. So somebody starts right after she disappeared, somebody on the night she disappeared, and somebody in the future or present day where we are. So the whole thing came together. The timing of the different points of view, the different timelines, all came together at what I think is the perfect moment. And I love it when authors do that really well. Another one I think that did that really well is Cujo. I know, they're such different books, but I think Stephen King did the same thing so well, where all of these different people in all of these different they're not in different times in the Stephen King book, but they're doing different things in different places, and they all come together at just the perfect moment. And that's exactly what it felt like reading The Night She Disappeared. Like, all the timelines and all the people telling the story just came together at the right moment. The only critique that I have about this book is I feel like the ending was just kind of like, and then the end. Like, it's like, and we were building up and building up and building up, and we found out what happened, and then it's all over. I was like, okay. I probably would have liked to hang out with them a little bit longer, but that's okay. I don't always get what I want. However, it was still my favorite. and I loved it. So what I am going to be doing with these books is I'm going to be picking my top 2 from each genre, except apparently romance, since I only had one. And I'm going to be adding them to my bracket so that at the end of the year, we're going to have a video from each genre with my favorites. One last thing that I wanted to show you, since we've been talking about the genres that I've read, I thought I would show you my genre blanket. Now, it needs one more book. I still have to do the row for Gwendy. So this color in my book is this brick. It's called Brick. It doesn't look brick, but it's called Brick. It doesn't look that way on the camera, but it's a red color, and that's my horror color. So I've got to do one row of that, and then this book, which is my fantasy color, which is the orange. So a row of red and a row of orange. Now, let me show you right now what it looks like. Those colors that I showed you were actually like at the beginning. And so here it is right now. This is the part where I am. You can clearly see that this purple line is romance because there's only one of them. And I can't even hold it all the way out. But the green is sci-fi. The blue is mystery thriller. The orange is fantasy, and the red is horror. So I'm going to add a red, I'm going to add an orange, and January is going to be done. And we will see what this looks like when we get to the end of the year. I was kind of thinking that I should do each month in a different stitch. Like it would still be the same length, but the stitches wouldn't be different. If you crochet, I'm using right now, I've been doing a front post treble crochet for all of these so far because I like having the ridges on there. It makes the ridges. So I was thinking about just switching to a front post double for February. And then I could even go to like a front post half double and then just singles for 1 month and then go back out. What do you think? Like go smaller and then bigger and then smaller. I don't know. Also, bad news. The blue that I'm using is discontinued. Because I just went through my stash to decide on the colors. So I tried to find it used and I found it and I placed an order and then they were like, oh, we don't have that anymore. Because I had to place like an order with an actual person, not a company. And she said, I've already sold it. And I was like, ah. So I had to pick another blue that doesn't quite match. It's a little bit lighter than this blue, but thankfully they keep making it. So we should be able to get it. Anyway, I'm going to update you on my blanket every time I do this monthly check-in. But the monthly check-in may start being nothing but stats and the blanket because I don't know that I need to talk about these books multiple times. You let me know what you think. If you even watch monthly wrap-ups, I don't know. I find myself watching a ton of TBRs because I love watching people like set up their TBRs and what they're going to read. And then I find myself watching more like weekly check-ins than I do the big monthly check-in at the end because they're shorter. Anyway, let me know what you think. I'm open to suggestions. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.